Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs long ago, in a kingdom surrounded by silver mountains and deep green forests, there lived a queen who longed for a child. One winter day, as she sat by the window sewing, she looked out at the falling snow. The frame of the window was made of dark ebony wood, and as she gazed at the white snowflakes, she accidentally pricked her finger with her needle. 3 drops of bright red blood fell onto the snow. The queen whispered softly, "I wish for a child with skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony." Her wish came true. She soon gave birth to a beautiful baby girl whom she named Snow White, but sorrow visited the kingdom too soon, for the gentle queen passed away shortly after. A new queen arrives in time, the king married again. His new queen was strikingly beautiful, but her heart was cold and proud. She owned a magical mirror, and every day she stood before it and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And the mirror always replied, "You, my queen, are the fairest of them all." But Snow White grew lovelier with each passing year, her smile bright as the morning sun, her voice soft and sweet, her kindness touching everyone around her. When Snow White became a young girl, the mirror one day gave a different answer. "Queen, you are fair, it's true to see, but Snow White is fairer still than thee." The queen's face stiffened. She could not bear the thought of anyone surpassing her, not even the gentle Snow White. Jealousy clouded her heart. Into the forest one day, the queen summoned a huntsman. "Take Snow White into the forest," she ordered quietly. "Do not bring her back." The huntsman led Snow White deep among the towering trees. But when he lifted his knife, Snow White looked at him with frightened eyes and whispered, "What have I done? Please let me go." Her innocence touched his heart. "Run, child," he said in a trembling voice. "Run far into the forest and never return." Snow White ran as fast as she could, her feet brushing through ferns and fallen leaves, her heart beating wildly. Strange shadows flickered around her, and unfamiliar sounds echoed through the woods. Tears filled her eyes. But at last, when her legs could carry her no farther, she saw a tiny cottage nestled beneath the trees. The little cottage Snow White approached the cottage and gently pushed open the door. Inside, everything was small, tiny chairs, tiny plates, tiny beds, and very tidy. She whispered softly, "Who lives here?" There were 7 little plates on the table, 7 cups, and 7 spoons. Snow White, hungry and exhausted, ate a tiny bit of bread and drank a sip of water from each cup. Water from each cup. Then she lay down across the 7 small beds, curling up gently until she fell asleep. That evening, 7 dwarfs returned to the cottage from their work in the mountains. They carried lanterns that glowed like warm fireflies. "What a lovely sight," said one. "Someone has been here," said another. "Look, a girl is sleeping in our beds," whispered a third. They gathered around her quietly. "She is beautiful," murmured the eldest. "Let her stay with us," said another kindly. When Snow White woke, she was startled to see 7 friendly faces peering up at her, but their smiles were warm. "Please don't be frightened," said the eldest dwarf gently. "We are the 7 dwarfs, you are safe here." Snow White told them everything, her life at the castle, the queen's jealousy, and her escape into the forest. "Stay with us," the dwarfs offered. "You can keep our home tidy and we'll keep you safe." Snow White nodded gratefully. "I would be happy to." And so her peaceful days in the little cottage began. The wicked queen's discovery meanwhile, back at the castle, the queen stood once more before her mirror. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" The mirror replied, "You, O queen, are lovely to see, but Snow White lives beyond the trees with 7 dwarfs so kind and small, and Snow White is the fairest of them all." The queen trembled with anger. She vowed to find Snow White herself. The first disguise, a peddler woman, the queen disguised herself as a harmless old peddler woman and traveled into the forest. She knocked on the dwarf's cottage door. "Pretty young girl," she croaked, "come try my fine laces." Snow White, forgetting the dwarf's warning not to speak to strangers, opened the door trustfully. The old woman tied the new laces around her dress, but pulled them so tight that Snow White fell faint and still. When the dwarfs returned, they cried out, "Snow White, what happened?" They untied the laces gently, and Snow White gasped for air, slowly returning to life. "Do not open the door to strangers," the dwarfs warned kindly. Snow White promised she would be careful. The second disguise, a fine comb, the queen tried again, this time disguised as an old woman selling beautiful combs. "Look, child," she said softly, "this comb will make your hair shine like silk." Snow White hesitated, but the comb was lovely. She allowed the woman to place it in her hair. But the moment it touched her head, Snow White fell unconscious once more. The dwarfs returned and carefully removed the poisoned comb. Snow White's eyes fluttered open. "Please, Snow White, they said. Never speak to anyone you do not know. Snow White nodded earnestly. The third disguise, a shiny red apple, the queen was more determined than ever. She prepared a beautiful apple, one side poisoned, one side harmless, then disguised herself as a sweet old grandmother. She knocked gently. Grandmother. She knocked gently. Dear child, you look tired. Take this apple. It's crisp and sweet. Snow White looked at the apple longingly. I must not accept anything. Oh, but look, said the old woman, taking a bite from the safe side. See, it's perfectly fine. Relieved, Snow White accepted the apple, and the moment she bit her side, she fell to the floor, still and silent. This time, nothing could wake her. The glass coffin. The dwarfs wept bitterly. She was the kindest girl, they cried. We will never find another like her. Because she looked as lovely as if she were merely asleep, they built a glass coffin so her gentle face could still be seen. They placed it on a hilltop, where soft sunlight touched it through the trees. Animals of the forest, deer, rabbits, birds, often gathered around her as if keeping watch. Time passed quietly. The prince finds Snow White. One day, a young prince traveling through the forest saw the coffin and the girl inside. He felt his heart fill with wonder. She is so beautiful, he murmured. Who is she? The dwarfs told him her story, her kindness, her gentle heart, and the sorrow that had befallen her. The prince bowed his head. May I take the coffin with me? I will guard her always. The dwarfs, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, agreed. As the prince's servants lifted the coffin, they stumbled slightly, just enough for the piece of poisoned apple to loosen from Snow White's throat. Snow White took a soft breath. Then her eyes opened. The prince knelt beside her. You're awake, thank goodness. The dwarfs cried with joy, dancing around her. Snow White blinked, looking at the faces around her with wonder. The prince took her hand gently. Come with me to my castle, I will treasure you always. Snow White smiled, her heart warm. She agreed. And so Snow White and the prince soon married, their wedding filled with music, gentle laughter, and happiness that seemed to light the whole land. The lesson of the story. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs reminds us that kindness shines even in the darkest times. A gentle heart, honesty, and courage are stronger than jealousy or pride. And no matter how difficult the path may seem, goodness will always find its way back into the light.